Welcome back to Half the Battle. I'm your host, as always, Daniel Levy, your co-host, Shaq. We're going to be talking UFC Beijing, Blaydes versus Francis Ngannou. And Shaq, it's going down, the rematch. And it's time to cash some bets at 4 a.m. on a Saturday morning, my man.
Yeah, man, the early bird gets the worm, and it's a great card. I'm glad to see Blaydes is in the spot that he's in, and Francis, it's unfortunate. They're on completely two different paths at the current moment, so I'm really looking forward to that fight, and I can't wait to see what happens.
Yeah, obviously we got a bunch of emerging prospects, specifically Chinese prospects, but more importantly, Shaq, a year ago today, Dana White was saying, doesn't Francis Ngannou just look like the heavyweight champion of something? And now it almost seems like they're trying to usher him out the UFC. Isn't it incredible what 2 losses will do to a career?
Yeah, man, it's crazy, and that was just based off that last fight, man. That last fight was horrendous, man. So it was kind of warranted, and a little bit too harsh at the same time. But he's got the chance to shut everyone up on Saturday morning.
And I know Francis Ngannou was on the losing end of that horrendous fight that you mentioned. But look, Derek Lewis landed 3 strikes. Francis Ngannou landed 0 strikes. But off of that fight, Derek Lewis went on to knock out Alexander Volkov. It was so spectacular that everyone forgot about the Ngannou fight. And then he got a title shot against the champ DC. So if Francis Ngannou actually comes out here and gets this upset, he could be right back in the mix, Shaq.
100%, man. He's got a big name. Like we said, at one point he was supposed to be the next great heavyweight champion. Unfortunately, things didn't work out, but we'll see. I hear he went back to France. I hear he's back at his home gym, so we'll see if he comes improved.
Well, Shaq, we remember what happened last time he went back to France, so I'm not sure that's necessarily a good thing, my man, but we're going to figure out firsthand 4 a.m. on a Saturday. But first up, in the flyweight division, we got Lewis, the Last Samurai Smolka. He's minus 220. The comeback on Mudaerji is plus 180. Now, Shaq, interestingly enough, less than a year ago, when Lewis Smolka fought inside the octagon for the very last time, one of the biggest plays we ever had was on Matheus Nicolau, and he went out there with a 30-25, beautiful performance. Now they're bringing Lewis Smolka back. He got 3 wins on the regional scene, all finishes. He's been showing his heart. But now he's taking on this new kid. The kid's super young, Mudaerji. Very intriguing style, a lot of potential. You think he's ready for Smolka at this point in his career?
Yeah, I do. I think a lot of people can be ready for Smolka. I think Smolka's a very tough guy, very experienced. He's fought some of the best, but, his style has a lot of holes in it. His takedown defense is not very good. His striking defense is not very good. He is a tough guy, like I mentioned before. He's Hawaiian. It's very hard to put those guys out, so he's got that going for him. And, he'll walk guys down, he'll move forward. And we know on the mat, if your mat game's not on point, he will scramble and attempt a lot of submissions, man. So he's an interesting guy, but I think his opponent here has a very solid left kick. I think he can blast Smolka with kicks, and I think that as long as he makes the crowd ooh and ah with those hard kicks, uses movement, land the harder shots, I think it's very easy to look good against Smolka. The guy is very basic, he's very simple, but at the same time you got to have composure. But I'm gonna go for the upset here. I like Sumajari.
Yeah, man, it's really intriguing because I feel like the higher ceiling goes to Mudaerji all day, man. I mean, I think he's only, 22 years old, so just wait till he's 24 or 25. You could be looking at a potential future contender. But right now, we got to address what the deal is, and on the feet, he's twice the speed of Lewis Smolka. He's going to blow Smolka out the water on the feet. This kid's throwing side kicks, hook kicks. He's almost like a Chinese Yair with a little bit of Melvin Gillard. And the reason I say a little bit of Melvin Gillard, yes, he is a knockout artist. I have seen him go out there and knock people out with flying knees. But the one glaring weakness in his game is his submission defense. I have seen fights where he's gone out there and dominated, gets taken down one time, and as soon as his neck got touched, it was game, set, and match. So for Mudaerji, he's got to keep this fight standing the entire time. Now, what's good about that for him in this particular matchup is that Lewis Smolka ain't no D1 wrestler. So, for Lewis Smolka to get this fight to the mat, he's really got to exert all his energy, or Mudaerji has to make a stupid rookie mistake. Because otherwise, it's going to stay standing, and Mudaerji is about to sidekick and hook kick this guy at will. I see the only way Lewis Smolka gets a victory, it would have to be a comeback victory, somehow drag this fight to the mat, take his back, and choke him out. Otherwise, he's going to get lit up here, Shaq, and I do think he's going to get lit up here. I'm going to go with Mudaerji. I could see a case for an early stoppage, because Smolka gets dropped every single fight. I mean, when we talk about his last UFC fight against Mateus, got dropped 4 or 5 times. His last fight on the regional scene versus Kyle Estrada got dropped 2 or 3 times. So eventually, I mean, I know he's Hawaiian. I know these Hawaiians got incredible chins, but eventually, the ref's going to stop a fight eventually. I mean, you saw with my boy Yancy Medeiros, against Alex Cowboy, got dropped 100 times, survived, won that fight, but then against Cowboy Cerrone, on the first knockdown, they called the fight. So don't be surprised if this is a TKO win for Mudaerji. But I'm going to go with decision here because these Hawaiians can take a whooping. I think he will take a whooping. Mudaerji just cannot let Smolka take his back, cannot let Smolka get on top because Smolka is an opportunistic scrambler. However, Mudaerji ain't going to be shooting for a takedown, so I don't think it'll get there. I'm going to go with Mudaerji for the upset as well, Shaq. Now, next up in the bantamweight division, we got Pingyuan Liu, he's minus 230, and the comeback on Martin Day is plus 190. Now, Shaq, we cashed on Pingyuan Liu in his UFC debut at dog money odds against Damian Stasiak. Now he's taking on Louis Smolka's teammate, Martin Day, who, long striker, tough Hawaiian. Who you got?
Yeah, Martin Day, Frankie Edgar brought him in to mimic Yair for that camp. And, he's a very exciting striker. He's long, he's got the spinning kicks, he's very flashy. And, on the other side, Pingyuan Liu, he's like a Chinese bull, he likes to go forward. He likes to rough guys up. He trains with Song Yadong every day. He's training at Team Alpha Male for this fight. I think it's going to be a very good fight. I could definitely see this fight, being, kind of a war, a great back and forth fight. But I see Pingyuan Liu just being too rough. I see him, pushing him against the fence a little bit, cracking him with the harder shot. I think Martin Day has very good kicks, but I'm not sure about his boxing on the inside. And I think Pingyuan Liu is just gonna win a fairly close decision in his hometown.
Yeah, I'm with you on that as well, my man. I think that Pingyuan Liu, he impressed many, at least me. He impressed me a lot in that UFC debut. I know there were some sketchy moments, but look, Damian Stasiak is a UFC vet. Damian Stasiak's a guy that went 3 hard rounds with Pedro Munoz. So I felt like for a UFC debut, he went out there, did his job. Now we're going to see a more comfortable version of Pingyuan Liu. And like you mentioned, Song Yadong's main training partner. And I know in some cases, you got the Chris Weidmans and the Volantes. The main training partner might be a punching bag. But I don't see it that way with Pingyuan Liu, man. I think this kid's a very serious talent, very physical for the weight class. And Martin Day, he's a tall, long striker. Interestingly enough, when you go back and you watch some of Martin Day's regional fights, I mean, he's knocked guys out with spin kicks, flying knees, the whole bit. When he did step up on Contender Series, I was not impressed at all. But then again, I heard the stories that, he took that fight on super short notice. The weight cut was so intense that he just couldn't perform like he's used to. I heard that the guy has a lot more to show than what he displayed on that Contender Series fight. So I'll give him the benefit of the doubt, and I'm definitely going to keep my eyes open. However, I do think that at this point in their respective careers, Pingyuan Liu is simply ahead right now. And for that reason, I'm going to take him via a somewhat dominant decision here, Shaq. Now, next up in the UFC middleweight division, we got Kevin Holland. He's minus 425, and the comeback on John Phillips is plus 340. Now, Shaq, in 28 professional fights, John Phillips has only seen the third round 1 time, and that was over 10 years ago against Tom Watson. You think there's a chance he sees the third round here against Kevin Holland?
It's a tough question. It just depends on if Kevin, wants to play around or not. Phillips, I mean, SBG, besides Connor, and I mean, look at how he looked his last fight. I mean, they're not doing so hot, bro. This guy, he's never been out the first round in barely any of his fights. I think Kevin just needs to weather the early storm, not get caught with a punch in the first couple of minutes, and eventually this guy will start to look for ways to go home. So, I like Kevin here for sure. Kevin, I mean, in his fight on the Contender Series, he was about minus 800 in one of those fights, and he let the guy survive for all 3 rounds. So, it just depends on whether he wants to play or not. But Kevin Holland takes the win here for sure.
Kevin Holland is an extremely talented guy, not just on the feet. Not only can he knock guys out, Shaq, but he's also a brown belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And I've seen him go out there, win fights via triangle choke, and he gets on top of a guy like John Phillips. And the fight will be over shortly after because John Phillips, basically what he's got is a nice 2-minute explosion. While the fight's standing, for the first 2 minutes. I mean, look, the guy's going to come out there. They call him the White Mike Tyson for a reason. I believe he's got 25 first-round finishes. He swings some bombs. He's a bar brawler, kind of like this guy Rashad Couter we're going to talk about here in a little bit. But that's what John Phillips is, He's, they call him the Welsh wrecking machine. I feel like on the regional scene, you put him in there with some cans, he'll go out there and smash them. But when it comes time to the UFC level, you know what's something you need in the UFC, Shaq? A ground game. And John Phillips does not have a ground game whatsoever. Look, it's just about Kevin Holland, like you said. Is he going to play around? I think even if he plays around, he can win this fight. But if he plays around, he gives John Phillips more of a chance to connect on his chin. Because, look, we can't sit here and act like John Phillips doesn't have power. He does have power. However, he's super beatable. First takedown, and I think the fight's over. So is Kevin going to come out here with his, his striking doesn't look the prettiest, but it's very effective because of his length, his athleticism. And I do think that he's a smart fighter. I mean, he's a guy that went out there and beat Jeff Neal. He's a guy that went out there and had a 3-round war with Curtis Millender prior to his UFC career, Shaq. And then that Contender Series fight, they put him in there with a can. He was minus 800. In my opinion, he should have got out there and finished him in the first round because, interestingly enough, a month or two later on the LFA regional scene, that same can did get finished by knockout. But they bring him in there against Thiago Marreta Santos, and if you're not the real deal against a guy like Thiago Marreta Santos, look, even if you are the real deal against a guy like Thiago Marreta Santos, he might go out there and finish you in the first round. You saw what he did to a guy like Jack Hermanson, who I'm very high on. And Kevin Holland, not only did he survive the 3-round distance, Shaq, he was attacking with arm bars. There were a couple near submissions. He was talking to Marreta the whole time. I mean, they don't call him Big Mouth for no reason. I feel like in this fight, they're going to stand and bang for a little bit. I feel like Kevin will not go down. I feel like he's going to duck under one of the shots, take this guy down. He's going to start talking to him, start dropping some bombs. And when John Phillips tries to scramble out, I think he's either going to give up his back, from there, rear naked choke, or don't be surprised if it's a guillotine choke either. I'm going to go with Kevin Holland via submission here. Now, next up, in the strawweight division, we got Yaozong. She's minus 440, and the comeback on Syuri Kondo is plus 350. Now, Shaq, I know everyone remembers the last time UFC came to China. We're staying up at 5 a.m., cashing max bets on this chick making her UFC debut named Yaozong. Now, I know now people are going to be like, oh, it was against Kyle Curran. How are you going to toot your own horn and this and that? Well, first of all, you weren't saying it back then when she was minus 105 versus Kyle Curran. Everyone was saying a bunch of shit about, oh, what if it hits the mat? What if this and that? And we didn't buy any of that bullshit. We went big on Yaozong. You had a 10-unit play on it. She came through. Next fight against Viviane Pereira, dog odds. Now they're finally starting to catch on, Shaq. Now she's a big favorite. You think she's going to roll here as the favorite?
I do, man. I think Yaozong, I just think, in the female game, with her range, her distance, the side kick to the head, her straight right. I mean, she's a high-level striker in that female game. And, Syuri Kondo, she doesn't really have too many different ways of movement. She comes straight in, man. I think it's going to be pretty easy to, touch her up from the outside. And, we added inside low kicks to her game against Viviane. So, I think her takedown defense is improving. And, I think Syuri Kondo's a fairly tough girl. She got finished her fight against Patello, but the fight before that against Shammy John, who's like 20 years old. I mean, those girls just aren't on Yaozong's level. So hence the wide line. So I got Yaozong all day in this one. I'm actually say by finish.
Yeah, look, a finish isn't going to surprise me either. I feel like Yaozong, she's going to be a top 15 fighter in that weight class very, very soon. I mean, not often do you see girls come out here side-kicking women to the face. She's so vicious out there. And it's not just a knockout artist too, Shaq, because, I mean, in that UFC debut, we saw, she was buckling the very tough Hawaiian Kyle Curran. I know Kyle doesn't win UFC fights, but not many people finish her. Kyle Curran was dropping her, buckling her, side kicks to the face. So then we thought, okay, she's this buzzsaw. She's this potential knockout artist. But what happens when she fights someone else with a lot of power? Because, Viviane Pereira, a lot of people were calling her the John Lineker of the women's division. Super short, throws big bombs. So we knew that in that fight, Yaozong can't stand and trade in the pocket. So what does she do? She comes out with a grunt and run game. She was doing her best Holly Holm, making sounds for the judges. I was like, damn, so she's got a point fighting game too? I am so impressed with Yaozong. And I know a lot of people have an issue with her clinch game. And I kind of disagree. And me and Shaq, we were talking about this, and it's kind of like the Jermaine Durandamy deal, where it's very tough to take her down, but she can be pinned up against the fence for 1 or 2 minutes at a time. And my whole response to that is, okay, well, while they're at distance, she's going to be butchering her on the feet. And then if Syuri Kondo wants to kill a minute or two of the clock, stall out a little bit of time against that cage, it's no big deal, because as soon as they separate, Zonan's going to be butchering her some more. So I feel like the more meaningful shots all across the board are going to be landed by Yan Zonan. And Syuri Kondo likes to stand up and trade, so she's going to give Yan Zonan the fight she wants. I think Yan Zonan rolls here. Now, next up, also in the strawweight division, we got Weili Zhang. She's minus 470. And the comeback on Jessica Aguilar is plus 375. Now, Shaq, I know Jessica Aguilar. I know we were wrong about her last fight. I know she went out there. We overestimated that Jody Escobar. We thought that literally any bum off the street could beat Jessica Aguilar. Turns out we were wrong. Turns out we need someone good. So let me ask you this. Do you think the 17-1 Chinese prospect is good enough to get it done here?
Yeah, Aguilar, you gotta obviously say she looked better her last fight. I mean, her first two fights were complete wipeouts, and they were hellacious beatings. So, congrats to her. And I think she's, I just think she's also kind of similar to Syuri Kondo in a way. She likes to move forward. She likes to, occasionally box in the pocket and mixing a takedown here and there. The thing with now she's fighting Weili Zhang, 17-1. Any person with a 17-1 record, that's got to be respected on any type of level. And this girl Weili Zhang's huge for the weight class. I just see her landing the harder shots throughout the 3 rounds. I see her stuffing the takedowns, and not to mention she took down Danielle Taylor. Now, the reason why the performance wasn't so impressive, I mean, Danielle Taylor's 5 foot. It's kind of hard to strike against someone that's so smaller than you, but she still took Danielle Taylor down. And I mean, not too many people have had an easy fight with Taylor, so I respected the performance. I thought it was a great win. I just think now things will resort back to the old ways for Aguilar. I think Weili Zhang can take her down when she commits to it. I think she can get the better of the boxing exchanges with that left hook, and I think she'll get her hand raised in her hometown.
Yeah, a couple of things that I really like about Weili Zhang's game is, for that UFC debut, she had to make the long flight to the United States and the jet lag, everything. And then not only that, you're taking on a girl in Danielle Taylor who might not be the most exciting, might not still be with the company, Shaq, but every single person that's gone out there and fought Danielle Taylor has had a tough fight. The most dominant victory that anyone's ever had over Danielle Taylor was J.J. Aldrich, and that was the exact same score that Weili Zhang had. It was 29-28. So as far as I'm concerned, she did a great job there. And, man, I like her combo. She had that nice GSP Superman jab to a right leg kick. She throws elbows. If you start to blitz a girl like Weili Zhang, she's going to get off on that left hook. She's got takedowns as well. Don't sleep on her submission game either, Shaq. So, look, I just think that Jessica Aguilar is a walking punching bag. I think she's from the stone ages of MMA. I think she's from the stone ages of women's MMA. I think she lost to Angela Magana. And I just simply think we overrated a Can and Jody Escobar the last time, because we literally thought anyone could beat Jessica Aguilar. Well, I think Weili Zhang is going to come out here, get this job done. And I think there's a chance it's going to get a little violent in there, Shaq. Don't be surprised if there's blood in this fight. I got Weili Zhang for the victory. Now, next up in the heavyweight division, next up in the light heavyweight division, we got Rashad Couter. He's minus 135, and the comeback on Hu Yaozong is plus 115. Shaq, this is going to be a really ugly fight, but it might be super entertaining while it lasts. The loser of this fight is going home, no doubt about it. The question is, who's that going to be?
Yeah, man, it's a very tough fight because, Rashad Couter, I mean, it seems like more people are starting to realize now in terms of that line movement, but it seems like, the guy's allergic to adversity, man. When things get bad in that cage, he generally checks out, I think he got taken down one time, and I understand De La Roca's a huge man, but De La Roca's like 4-2, and he got smashed on, and it was kind of embarrassing. And the Tuivasa one, no shame, but he did get knocked out unconscious. And his fight with Sherman, his leg got smashed in. So, I guess we could say this is a step down in competition, considering what's this guy's name? Yeah, Yaozong, he's not very good either. His fight with Cyril Asker, he got completely outclassed and finished. So, both of these guys are low level. I feel like Coulter is probably the better athlete. I feel like he probably hits harder. He probably, is a little stronger, but I think Yaozong is probably a little stronger mentally. So, Yaozong's got to make this a dirty, ugly fight, get Coulter thinking, and, make him beat himself. So, I can't pick Rashad Coulter in a fight, but I will take Hugh Yaozong.
This is going to be one of the ugliest fights we've ever seen in our lives, Shaq. The last guy that Rashad Coulter beat was 3-15, and I'm not even exaggerating on that, my man. And it's funny because when Rashad Coulter made his UFC debut, I didn't know who he was, and I picked him to beat Chase Sherman because I was like, I mean, Chase Sherman is the worst fucking guy on the roster. A guy named Rashad's going to go out there and beat him, and turns out that wasn't the case, Shaq. Turns out Chase Sherman wasn't the worst guy on the roster. Turns out this guy, Rashad Coulter, it's not just in the UFC days, my man. Go back to the regional scene, and he's tapping out to Kimuras that aren't even locked in against journeymen. And, it's just a very sad thing to see. And, I know people are like, oh, he's training at Fortis MMA. We're going to talk about Alex Morono, who's allegedly training at Fortis MMA here in a second. But, look, I just think that if Rashad Coulter doesn't knock this guy out with an overhand, that he's gonna lose the fight. I know Hugh Yaozong. I know it was ugly. I know he lost to Cyril Asker. First of all, let's not act like Cyril Asker wouldn't go out there and choke out Rashad Coulter in the first round, because he absolutely would. But I get it. Cyril Asker is the French jobber. I get it. He lost to that guy. It's embarrassing. But all that being said, I think that Hugh Yaozong is going to tap out Rashad Coulter with a standing guillotine, my man. I think that's his favorite move. I think that Rashad Coulter, he finds a way to lose, and I think he'll find a way to lose here as well. I would not go big on either side because they're both total cans, but I'm going to go with Hugh Yaozong. I mean, look, they're not flying Rashad Coulter all the way to China to get a win. I'll tell you that right now. Instead, what they're doing is, they had a little conversation. They were like, all right, Sean Shelby, who can we give to our 3-1 Chinese light heavyweight prospect to get a win? Who's the absolute worst guy we can call in, fly him across the world to potentially get Hugh Yaozong a UFC win? And they were like, I know just the guy. He's coming off 3 losses. We were going to cut him, but let's give him one more chance. Let's give him a chance to come out here, fly across the world with that jet lag, and get standing guillotine. So I'm going to go with Hugh Yaozong here via submission. Now, next up, we got Lauren Mueller. She's minus 410, and the comeback on Yanan Wu is plus 330. Now, Shaq, you going with the Contender Series veteran Mueller, or are you going with Yanan Wu here?
Yeah, I'll take Mueller in this fight. I just think she's the more athletic girl. I think Yanan's probably got a little bit of size on her. But, I just think in her fight against Gina Mazzani, I mean, she just let Mazzani come out there and dictate everything, the striking, the wrestling, the clinch. So, I know she's got her other losses are to Yana Kunitskaya, who, I guess is on a different level, but I think Mueller's got good power. She showed in her Contender Series fight. She had a spinning back fist. I think she's a fairly good striker. And I just think, her last fight too, there was definitely adversity in that fight against Dobson, and she handled that as well. But but she's still a little younger in her career. But I definitely see her projecting better, and I see her winning this fight. Whether it's close or one-sided, sometimes these fights can play a little close considering that they're girls. But I think Mueller will get her hand raised in China.
Look, I'm not going to be surprised if Lauren Mueller wins just because, it is a minus 410 favorite. She's heavily favored to win this fight, but the reason that I actually think it should be lined a little bit closer is because, I know Yanan Wu lost to Gina Mazzani, and that's super embarrassing, but when you go back and you look at it, Gina Mazzani was hugging her leg for dear life, and something that Lauren Mueller's not going to do is hump legs. Lauren Mueller wants to stand and bang. She's a bit of a brawler. I will say Lauren Mueller does have some nice head movement for that division standards. I was pretty impressed on that front, but I think that Yanan Wu, isn't she only 23, 24 years old? She's taken a full year off since her UFC debut. I feel like we're going to see a better version of her, man. I feel like that last fight didn't really tell the story. I also heard that she might have dislocated her shoulder in that. I don't know if there's any truth to that, but that's what I heard. So I feel like people aren't quite sure what to expect from Yanan Wu here, because on the regional scene, man, I saw her going out there knocking girls out with big bombs. So I just feel like if she gets that stand-up fight that she wants, this one could actually play out a lot closer than the line indicates. So for that reason, Shaq, I think it's a dog or pass situation. And, just to be controversial, I'm going to go with Yanan Wu here for the upset. Now, next up in the welterweight division, we got Alex Morono. He's minus 115. And Kenan Song is minus 105. Now, Shaq, This guy Alex Morono, he's really good at beating people that are about to hit retirement. Retired James Muntasri, retired Josh Berkman. We thought he was going to go out there and potentially retire Jordan Mean. He wasn't able to do it. What do you think the ceiling is on a guy like Alex Morono? You think he can come out here and beat the emerging Kenan Song?
Man, it's tough to say. It seems like Morano's adopted this new style of swinging bombs and swinging for the fences and trying to be this exciting fighter. And I don't think it's very smart. And it seems like he can't get up from bottom either. Allegedly he's a black belt, but his last fight, I mean, he got completely schooled on the mat. So it's really interesting to see if he's gonna hang around these days, because welterweight's no slouch, man. Like, you can't be doing some of the things that he was doing his last fight, thinking you're going to stick around here. Now, Kenan Song, all his losses are fairly respectable. He lost to Israel. He lost to Riddell. Who was his other loss?
A Russian wrestler.
In a Russian. So, all his losses are fairly respectable. He's a big, strong guy. I think he's definitely the better athlete here between him and Morono. I definitely think he's stronger. Morono, I hear he's switching camps, this and that, but I feel like I just see this being a bad fight for him, man. I see Kenan slipping something down the middle, touching Morono's chin. He has been wobbled in the past and he has been knocked stiff before. Kenan Song, he's been, finished with a body shot by a pro kickboxer here and there. He's fought 2 pro kickboxers. And, I think Kenan Song is actually going to finish Morono here, man. I think Morono just makes bad mistakes in there. Like you said, it seems like the perfect fights for him are, the guys in the wheelchairs on their way out the game, it's unfortunate. He had a great fight against Muntasri, but seems like he's been on the decline, man. So I like Kenan Song here.
Look, there's nothing wrong with losing to Jordan Mean, but the way he lost to him, you think that just based on Jordan Mean's last few fights, he was looking super weathered. He was looking like an old man. He retired once before. It didn't seem like it would take much to beat him, and the kind of egg that Morono laid in that fight, I mean, look, I know they got moron in his last name, so, you don't have to look too far, but I'm just saying, that was some of the worst shit I've ever seen, Shaq. That was some regional level shit. Alex Morono would not win the NFC title. I'll tell you that right now. Jared Nitrain Gooden would whoop his ass as well. As far as this matchup's concerned, it is a bad matchup for Morono because Morono likes to go in there and swing big bombs, but he's simply not as athletic or physical as a guy like Kenan Song. And I know Hector Aldana won the first round, but look, Hector Aldana was throwing leg kicks on the outside and for a round, and then he got knocked out with a nice straight right. Not to mention, Kenan Song's money punch is that straight right. He won both of his UFC fights with that straight right. And I think he's going to win a third fight in a row with that straight right as well, man. I think that when Alex Morono tries to close the distance with one of those, looping overhands, it's going to be a straight down the pipe on the chin that puts him down, because we all know, Shaq, if there's one thing that's going to beat a looping punch, it's a straight punch. And that's just the deal. I mean, unless we're talking about a counter left hook like a Paul Daly, but we're not talking about a counter left hook. We're talking about a lead left hook, and the way to beat that is a straight right down the pipe. That's what Kenan brings to the table. I know he looks a bit inactive in some of his fights, but the reason I don't think that's a worry here is because Alex is going to bring the fight to him. When you bring the fight to a counter striker, that's when they find all their openings. And I think Kenan's biggest weakness is actually his takedown defense. You go back, you watch that fight with that Russian before his UFC debut. The Russian was able to capitalize with some nice blast doubles, which you and I know Alex Morono does not possess. This is going to be a stand-up fight, which Kenan wants. And let's talk about the Fortis MMA thing. So, people are under the impression that, it's a new Morono. He's training at Fortis MMA with Jeff Neal and Razak and all these guys, Charles Bird. The reason I don't think it's that big of a deal is because, first of all, he's only there twice a week. He's on there Monday and Tuesday. So, and Tuesday is their hard sparring day. So basically, he's just getting knocked out by Jeff Neal in the gym, and he has one day of pads. And we're going to sit here and act like he's a full-time member at Fortis MMA. Not to mention, you could put John Jones in any camp, and he's still going to be the best pound-for-pound fighter. That being said, you could put Alex Morono in any camp, and he's still going to be a fucking journeyman. So, yeah, I got Kenan Song here via straight right knockout. Main card time. First up in the welterweight division, we got Li Jingliang. He's minus 175. And the comeback on David Zawada is plus 155. Now, Shaq, before you break down the matchup, I got to know, is David Zawada German or is he Polish? Because I've seen a German flag next to his face, but then when he made his UFC debut against Danny Hot Chocolate, their Reebok kits were all they're all Polish. I mean, it said POL on the kit, man. So I got to know, which one is it? Is he German or Polish?
Man, I'm not very sure. He could be a fake Pole or a fake German. Who knows? But I think he's definitely a better fighter than he is countryman. Yeah, Li Jingliang. He's one of the most exciting fighters that we have in the welterweight division. The guy always brings it. He moves forward. He likes to bang. And Zawada, he had a very impressive debut against Hot Chocolate. That fight could have went either way. And I mean, he's getting another tough second fight, man. And they're sending him to China to do it. Early on, I really liked Zawada in this fight, but after watching a little bit of tape, I do think he's ready for this level of competition. But at the same time, there's a difference between winning and fighting tough. I think his fight with Hot Chocolate, it was very close. It definitely could have went his way, but the thing that separated them was just the experience in those type of battles, man. Hot Chocolate's an experienced vet, and he was able to do slightly a little bit more things to sway the judges, man. That experience plays a big factor in these things. And now in the second fight, he's fighting another super experienced guy. The thing with that similarly in Hot Chocolate, both of them have questionable chins. And, Zawada definitely cracked Hot Chocolate's chin. I know Danny's a southpaw, but, Lee's striking defense can be super reckless at times, man. In that fight against Jake Matthews, I mean, at times, I thought early in his career that he'd be able to just get through it. But, he's been dropped several times. The Keitaro fight, he got dropped against Bobby Nash. He got dropped against Camacho. He got dropped against Jake, So this guy's got a big history of taking damage in his fights. And sometimes it adds up and sometimes it plays a big factor. So you got to keep a lookout with that on Li Jingliang. But, I just feel like the environment of fighting in China is going to be a little bit too much for Zawada. I see him putting up a good fight, but I just see Lee, winning a fight of the night type of fight. I see it being a great back and forth fight. I see Zawada definitely hurting him early, but I definitely see Lee, coming back late like he typically does at times. So I'll take Li Jingliang.
I think David Zawada is a tough workman, On the regional scene, it's interesting because he was going out there and actually knocked a couple of guys out stiff, but what I really noticed in the UFC debut was his scrambling ability. The guy's a great scrambler, but in order to be a great scrambler, Shaq, that means that you start off in bad positions. And against certain guys, you're not going to be able to scramble your way out of there. We used to talk about Louis Smolka all the time, how, he he's a scrambler. He likes to get in bad positions so he could scramble out. But then you fight a guy like Ray Borg, and that shit ain't going to work in that matchup. And similarly here, I don't think that's going to work here against Li Jingliang. I feel like the dude is very heavy on top. Let's not even talk about the striking, where I feel like Li Jingliang has significantly more power than David Zawada. It just comes down to his chin once again, because he's such a warrior that, he'll eat the shots, he'll recover quick, he'll get back up. But eventually, there's going to come a time when this dude gets knocked out cold. I don't know if it's going to be this fight. I don't know if it's going to be the next fight, 5 fights from now. But eventually it is going to happen, Shaq. That's why when Li Jingliang fights, you want to bet him as an underdog. You want to bet him as a slight favorite. But here at minus 175, I think it might be a dog or pass situation. But from a pick perspective, I got Li Jingliang here, man. The last time he fought in China against another journeyman in Zach Otto, he handled him exactly how you're supposed to. It looks like he has a different intensity in there, man. And the dude is just a heavy, heavy hitter. And I also like the fact that he'll do whatever it takes to get the win. I know he eye-gouged Jake Matthews. He wasn't able to get the victory there. But just the fact that, while you're getting choked and you have a 3-second window where you're about to go unconscious, the fact that he thought about eye-gouging him, yeah, I know it's dirty, but so what? The guy will fight for your money. So I kind of, I don't want to sit here and say I like that because I don't like seeing someone get their eyes gouged. But I like the fact that if I were to bet on him, I know that he's going to do whatever it takes while he's still conscious to try to get the job done. So that's a great quality. David Zawada is super tough. It's unfortunate for him, the matchups they gave him, but maybe that speaks to how good they think this kid is, that they put him in there with Hot Chocolate. He went to a split decision, and now they're putting him in there with Li Jingliang in China. But I also think they might view it like, who's the guy we can fly into China to get Li this win? And I think that's what's going to happen here, man. I got Li Jingliang for the victory. Now, next up in the bantamweight division, this is a very interesting matchup just because of the prospects in it. We got Yadong Song. Song Yadong, he's minus 425. The comeback on Vince Morales is plus 340. Obviously, we've been hearing about the quote-unquote future world champion Song Yadong for a while now. And this kid, Vince Morales, he impressed a lot of people even in defeat in his Contender Series fight. He showed a lot of heart. So now I got to ask you, Shaq, do you think he's a live dog in this spot, or you think Yadong Song is going to roll here?
Nah, man, I think Song Yadong's gonna roll here. Vince Morales, he's a tough guy. He's that typical tough guy that earned his way here, but unfortunately, he's just in the midst of the Song Yadong show, especially in China, man. Song's a special athlete. We definitely know that his age is a myth. He's really 27 years old. But I mean, when his last fight was super impressive, man. I definitely thought he was going to win that fight, but I didn't see it going down like that. Certain Asia, at least going into the fight, would have, on paper, was a tough test. And, he ran through him. So he's ready to face, top 30, 40 guys. And, I don't think Vince Morales is that. I think Vince Morales is, unfortunately, just a sacrifice.
Look, Vince Morales, he's a very tough brawler. You start to slug with a guy like that and you leave your chin in the air and your hands down like Domingo Pilarte did, you're going to get dropped. Because the kid does throw bombs. He is pretty experienced, and he's a rugged dog out there. The thing with Yadong Song, my boy Song Yadong in this spot, man, he's just a different level of athlete, different level of tenacity, a lot of potential. It's kind of funny they still list him at 19 because between you and me, he's 26 years old, but this kid, I don't know if he's a future world champion, but I know that he's going to wreck shop inside the UFC octagon. I know he's going to make a lot of statements, and I think there's going to be another one of those, man. I think that Vince will be back. Congrats to him on getting that UFC call. But I think he's going to take a L, potentially a canvas nap here, Shaq. I'm going to go with Song Yadong via a very dominant victory. Co-main event of the evening. We got the newcomer, Sergey Pavlovich. He's minus 125, and Alistair the Reem Overeem is plus 105. Now, Shaq, oftentimes it's me that's picking against Overeem, and it's you that's picking him. I gotta know, are the tides gonna turn this time? You going with the newcomer or what?
Yeah, Alistair Overeem, another guy where, I've said in the past that heavyweights have 9 lives, but Alistair might have ran out of those lives, man. I'm a big fan of Alistair. I'll always like Alistair, and this is definitely a step down in competition. This Sergey guy, he's a stiff Russian. He trains at Eagles MMA. That's Khabib's gym that Magomedov was pumping money into. I think that Sergey, I think that he can still. I know beating Alistair Overeem is easier said than done, but I think that the means to do it isn't that hard. I think Alistair at this stage in his career, I don't see that chin holding up. It might hold up for a fight or two, but I see more vicious stiffenings on the way if he continues to fight. And, of course he will continue to fight. But how I see this fight going, I see them clinching up a little bit early, seeing who's better in the clinch. And then at some point, I feel like Alistair's going to be up on points a little bit, trying to run away, trying to use his movement, trying to use his distance. But then eventually he'll just run into a punch and go down. I think it's just going to go down like that. I just don't think he's going to be able to take a punch. Now, I know Sergey, he's very basic. He's got a good clinch. He's got a good right hand. And at heavyweight, anything can happen, man. I just don't trust Alistair's chin. But it's surprising to see him as an underdog, man, especially against a guy making his debut. So, if you trust that chin, by all means.
Well, I don't trust that chin. However, I do think that he has a significant experience advantage in this particular fight. He had a significant experience advantage over Ngannou and Blaydes as well, but I think those are different caliber athletes than Sergey Pavlovich. Look, Sergey Pavlovich, he earned his way to the UFC, great record, knocked out a lot of people, might actually come out here and knock out Overeem as well. All it takes is one punch. That being said, Shaq, and it's funny because like I mentioned when I was introducing this fight, it's normally you that's out here defending Overeem, and I'm the one that's shitting on him, and I feel like now it's the opposite because I actually think that Alistair Overeem training with Curtis Blaydes is going to be very invaluable for this particular fight. Let me remind you about a fight between Alistair Overeem and Frank Mir. In that particular fight, Overeem wasn't using much of his stand-up. Don't get me wrong, he rocked Frank Mir a couple times, but his main game plan in that particular matchup, he actually turned into a wrestler against Frank Mir. You saw my boy the Reem going in there with blast doubles, and he kept him down for 3 straight rounds. I think he can employ a similar game plan here, and I think it'd be the smart idea to do here, man. Because look, he's always had a shitty chin, but before, we used to joke about how he's been knocked out 10 times. Well, now it's like fucking 16 times, Shaq. Now there's no more joking around. Now it's at the point where, you throw a paper ball at his chin and the guy's gonna go unconscious. So I still think he can come out here and wrestle Sergey Pavlovich. We talk about Sergey being a Russian, and he is a Russian. I respect all Russians. They're incredible warriors. But he's not a Dagestani Russian. The reason I bring that up is he's not a wrestler. He's one of the blonde hair Russians. He's like a Volkov. So the guy doesn't have the best takedown defense. I feel like Alistair can capitalize in that area. It's just about not getting knocked the fuck out, and that's a big factor in this fight. As long as he doesn't get touched on that chin or behind the ear, on the temple, I think he cruises here. I'm going to go with Alistair Overeem via decision. Main event of the evening, the rematch. Curtis Razor Blaydes, he's minus 230, and Francis the Predator Ngannou is plus 190. Shaq, you think my boy Francis Ngannou is going to get his swagger back, or is it going to be a title shot victory for Curtis Blaydes?
Yeah, man. Like I said earlier, it's unfortunate what's been happening to Francis, and it's funny, man. On his streak, when he was allegedly supposed to be the greatest heavyweight of all time, before I always said, what happens when this guy actually gets into a real fight? All his other fights were complete, walkthroughs, easy money. Besides the Blaydes fight, I mean, he definitely won that. But Curtis was like 5-0, and the 2 fights where he did face somewhat of adversity, he completely washed out. So it's interesting to see. Curtis Blaydes, this version of Curtis Blaydes is definitely gonna create some adversity. So Francis is definitely gonna have to do something that he's not used to doing. But Curtis Blaydes is definitely. I feel like both guys have definitely improved since they fought. I feel like Curtis Blaydes. I still feel like his striking's a little choppy, a little sloppy. I definitely see a lot of openings, but one thing Curtis is probably the best in the division at besides Cormier is wrestling. I mean, he'll just use force to run you over, and it's just that simple. I feel like that would be the smart thing to do here against Ngannou, get his muscles filled with blood and make him tired and make him start looking for ways out. And, I definitely think it can do it. Curtis is one of these guys that he knows what he's good at, man. He knows what game plan to stick to. And, occasionally he'll get caught with a punch here, but I think he's got a really good chin at heavyweight, man. I mean, he's never taken a canvas snap yet, but I think he's got a really good chin at heavyweight. I think that's one of his better qualities. So I definitely seeing him eating Francis Ngannou's power again, just like the first time. But the difference will just be, his tactics. I feel like he's going to push him against the fence, go for doubles, get the doubles eventually in the later rounds, the 3rd, 4th rounds, and I see him winning a dominant decision.
I think there's a high possibility that what you just said happens. I mean, obviously, Curtis Blaydes, he's a smart guy. He doesn't feel a need to go out there and stand and bang for his ego. He knows exactly where his strength lies. I know he got rocked a couple times against Mark Hunt, but instead of saying, oh yeah, I'm going to hit you back, he was like, okay, I'm going to blast double this guy. So that'd be a very smart thing to do here against Francis Ngannou. And real quick, before I break down this matchup, a lot of people are shitting on my boy Ngannou, saying stuff like, oh, the first fight with Blaydes doesn't really count because it was a doctor stoppage. Well, let me just say that half of Curtis Blaydes' face was hanging off, so it definitely counts, Shaq. But they're both at completely different parts and stages of their careers that fight doesn't really matter much anymore. So what it really comes down to in my mind is what we've been talking about this whole time. Where's Francis Ngannou at mentally? Because that Stipe fight, I feel like people talk about how it broke him mentally, but they don't talk about how it broke him physically, man. I mean, you've never seen Francis Ngannou in a pool of his own blood until you saw the Stipe Miocic fight, and it's one thing to get taken down a couple times, but what about getting taken down after you've literally hit this guy with your hardest shots? When they compared your punches to some Ford car, and you killed Alistair Overeem. I mean, everyone thought he was dead when they were watching the broadcast. So you go from that to the result he had against Stipe, and you can make excuses, say, hey, it was the greatest heavyweight of all time, he'll bounce back. But the way he bounced back against the Black Beast was super alarming. Now, one can make the argument, 2 of the heaviest hitters in that division, there's a reason that they didn't take too many risks, because one chin touch from either guy, and the fight could be over shortly after. So we can make that excuse. But if he comes out here shy again, there's no more excuses. That'll just go to show that he really is mentally done. That Stipe really did put that nail in the coffin. So the reason that I'm actually trying to make a case for Ngannou is because the line is plus 190 right now. And I think that at this line, man, it is dogger pass. When was the last time you saw a plus 190 next to a guy like Francis Ngannou? And I respect the hell out of Curtis Blaydes. He's an unbelievable fighter. Has a clear path to victory here. Take this guy down, wear on him, don't let him up, beat him up, start throwing those razor blades, those elbows, and send this guy packing back to France. But if Francis Ngannou has learned anything from those last two fights, if Francis Ngannou shows up anything like his old self, and what I mean by his old self is full of confidence, that invincibility he had, knowing that I can just touch these guys one time, they'll go flying, they'll never be the same, and I have beaten Curtis Blaydes before. If he shows up like that, I think he can get this upset. I just really don't know where he's at mentally. So it's really tough to pick him. I think from a betting perspective, it's dog or pass. Pick-wise, I will lean with Curtis Blaydes just because I feel like he's at a better place mentally, and I think he has a clear path to victory and a clear strategy. So if he comes out here and executes that game plan, I think he wins comfortably. But I'm still not counting out Francis Ngannou, man. I haven't written him off yet. This will be the fight that'll determine it all for me. He can lose a very spirited effort, and then I'll be like, okay, let's see what's next. But if he goes out here and doesn't really fight and gets dominated and doesn't show the heart, doesn't show the power, the will to win that he once had, I'll close the book on Francis Ngannou. So this fight is going to let me know everything I need to know, Shaq. I lean Curtis Blaydes. Now we got to hit up Kyle Marley for the Big Marley Minute. And joining us now on the Big Marley Minute is Big Marley himself. Kyle, you excited to wake up at 3:15 a.m. and watch another Chinese card and cash some bets?
I still haven't decided if I'm going to watch this card live or not. It's really not the kind of card that I'm stoked to wake up at 3 a.m. for. So I might just catch it on tape delay. But I haven't figured it out yet. I'll probably end up waking up just to check, make sure nothing was canceled in my DraftKings lineups. And then I might just get all hyped up and end up watching it. But we'll fucking see. But there's money to be won, and I'm ready to win it.
Well, I know one fight that you're going to be awake for, and that's the rematch between Curtis Blaydes and Francis Ngannou. Unbelievable fight. It appears like they're in two completely separate places in their careers, but the line, I think it's a dog or pass situation with that plus 190. But that being said, it seems like Curtis Blaydes' trajectory is towards that title shot, and we don't know where Francis Ngannou's head's at. So I got to know, man, from the DraftKings perspective, what are you thinking?
It's just an easy fight to really go all in on. Just target both sides. If you're making 10 lineups, just favor the guy you like more. Go 7-3 in favor of them, or 6-4, however you want to do it. But it's the best fight on the card to target. And for Blaydes, it's for his wrestling ability. I mean, he could go out there, get 130, 140 points with takedowns on a finish. I'd say he possibly has 5 to 10 takedown upside in this fight. And if he can get a win with that many takedowns, he's probably going to score more than any other fighter on the card. And he's only 8,700. So there's no way he does not pay that value off in a win. But Ngannou, man, he's a freak. These two have fought before. I don't think his confidence is going to be shot here because he knows he can win this fight. He's done it before. So I think he's live for a knockout. If Blaydes can't get those takedowns, I think Ngannou's going to win by knockout because I just don't see Blaydes winning a striking match here against Ngannou. It's going to have to be takedown heavy. And if it's anything like their first fight, Ngannou got right back up real quick, and Blaydes can't wrestle for 5 rounds against Ngannou. I just think he'll gas out by the time he gets to that. So you got to favor both sides. I really don't like any underdogs on this card. So I am going to pick Francis Ngannou here as one of my underdogs, and I'm just going to be a little bit heavier on him and hope that knockout does happen. So I'm picking Ngannou, but you definitely can't fade Blaydes here. He has the highest ceiling on the card.
Well, you got to search few and far between to find people taking Francis Ngannou right now. And Kyle, I got to say this, man. Speaking about competing for a lot of points, Song Yadong is taking on Vince Morales. And this kid, Song Yadong, he's been a buzzsaw in the UFC. I think he blew a lot of people's minds with his 2 performances. We weren't expecting that. Dana's already gone ahead and called him a future world champion. What's your opinion?
Oh, wow, I didn't know he called him that. But yeah, I'm very impressed with this kid. He's super exciting to watch, and he's very well-rounded. I'm glad we get to see him again here, and it's really a layup fight for him. I think that this is a fight that they want him to win, and I do think it's probably his toughest fight yet. It's a good one for him. Morales is going to go out there and he's going to strike, and we're going to see Yadong put on a show for those Chinese fans. And I think he's one of the best plays on the card. He's got a minus 155 inside the distance line, and I really like him so much because I don't like the people that are around him on DraftKings. I just think he's got such a better ceiling than those guys, even in a decision. And I'm pretty confident in him getting a win here. So I'm really not interested in Morales too much. Maybe a GPP shot because Yadong will be popular, and if he does lose, then you're going to kill off half the field. So maybe Morales for that reason, but I just think this is a great fight for Yadong, and I'm looking forward to him going out there and getting an impressive win.
Yeah, and good eye on that minus 155 for the inside the distance because actually as recently as yesterday, it was plus 215, Kyle.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Oh,
someone
shit.
made a big bet on not Song Yadong inside the distance.
I didn't even see that, but that's wild. I mean, hopefully they're going to catch because I'm definitely going to have some Yadong in my lineups.
Yeah, for sure. And man, this welterweight matchup between Li Jingliang and David Zawada, I have a feeling it could be fight of the night. I think that they're both going to slug. I think someone could go down, or it could be a 3-round war. Which way are you leaning?
Yeah, I think this could be the fight of the night as well. And for that reason, I think you could target both sides. I definitely prefer Jingliang. Over there in China, he's just going to want to go out there and put on a show, and he usually does. And at 8,500, I just have a hard time seeing him not pay that off in a win. So if he can get the win, it doesn't matter if it's really a decision or finish. He has a 100-point upside, and that's what I like about Jingliang every fight. But with his opponent, I mean, we've seen Jingliang get clipped a few times in fights, and that's not going to hold up forever. You're not just going to be able to go through it every time and not get knocked out. So Zawada with his, what has he got, 11 KOs on his record? If he can clip that chin, maybe he can get a knockout in that 7,700. I feel like that for sure puts him on the winning lineup. So another fight to target both sides of. It's just hard to pick against Jingliang over there in China. So he's going to be my guy. But if you're making a lot of lineups, this is one to go a little bit higher on Jingliang and then hedge a bit with Zawada in a lineup or two as well. But I'm going to go ahead and say Jingliang by decision.
Now, Kyle, you don't have to go too in-depth on this Lauren Mueller versus Yanan Wu fight, but I just want to know your perspective on the line, because I did feel like minus 410 was a bit wide, but maybe you think it's justified.
I mean, it might be a bit wide, but I do think she's the rightful favorite, and she should go out there and get the win. The issue is that she's 9,200. She's more expensive than Song Yadong, and it's just I don't want to pay for her over Yadong. So she's not going to be making my lineups because she's so expensive. And this is just a fade fight altogether for me because I do think she gets the win. I just don't think she scores highly. So fade all around. No interest in cash. No interest in GPP. Mueller I'll take by decision, though.
The heavyweight fight that everyone's been talking about. Rashad Couter versus Yaozong. Someone's got to pack their bags and leave the UFC. You think it's going to be Couter or Yaozong?
It's actually a light heavyweight fight between these former heavyweights.
You're right.
But I think it's going to be Couter. I'm just more impressed with what I've seen in him. I think he's going to have more power. And he knows he needs a win here. So I think he's going to be a little bit more safe. And, I mean, you got to target both sides of this fight because it's a minus 400 that it doesn't go to decision. So it's a great fight to target both sides of, especially when we don't like underdogs. You can take Wu here, because he is an underdog with finishing potential. So he's decent for that reason, but I got to take Couter to get the win. I could just kind of see this maybe going to decision and these guys being a little bit tentative, not going out there to kill. And if that's the case, it's going to be a terrible sloppy fight, and it will not be on the winning lineup for that reason. So I'm not going to go all in on it like a lot of people are talking about this week. But Coulter's my pick, and I think it will be tough for him not to pay off that $8,400 salary in a win, especially if he gets a finish. Then he's probably on the optimal lineup. But that goes for both these guys. So
Jessica Aguilar, now that we look back at her last fight, it turns out she got a softball in Jody Escobar. But there's no softball in the 17-1 Weili Zhang. So I got to know, man, making that flight all the way to China, you think Jessica Aguilar is going to make it 2 wins in a row?
No, I don't see it. Zhang's impressive, man. I think she's legit. and this is a good fight for her. I think Aguilar's on her way out, Zhang's on her way in, and I'm thinking the UFC is going to want her to get the win here over there in China. It's just the same thing with Mueller, man. She's too expensive for me to be rostering her at 9,200 or 9,300. So it's another most likely fade fight for me. But I would rather have Zhang over Mueller because I think she has more finishing upside and she's just going to be more active on the feet, I believe. So I like Zhang more, and she is $100 more expensive. So maybe she'll even be lower owned than Mueller, and I'm okay with that. But I'm probably just going to fade it all around because I'd rather have Yadong.
So my future world champion Yaozong's taking on Syuri Kondo. You think this is going to be the kind of mismatch that the line indicates, or you think there might be a sneaky upset here with Kondo?
Now, I think it's pretty much a mismatch like the line indicates, and this is exactly like those two other fights we just talked about with Mueller and Zhang, except for that Yan is 9,400. She's more expensive than both of them, and I don't see her getting a finish either, nor do I see her getting 94-plus points in a decision. So this is really the stay away from range for me. Just skip the $92 to $9,400 range and go ahead and pay down for your dong, who has much higher ceiling than these three and is just as likely to win, in my opinion. I think all three of these girls are going to win. I think they're good chances of getting a win. I would really rather just parlay all three of them together than I would throw them into DraftKings lineups. But I also don't really have any interest in their opponents. I do think Kondo makes for a decent cash punt because we could take the loss there, and if she could put up 30 points on a loss, as long as we got our 4 wins elsewhere, I think that's fine. So I might be looking at like an Aguilar or Kondo as a cash punt, but I really have no interest in their upside in GPPs.
And that's why you are the DraftKings guy for half the battle. But before I let you go, my man, last but not least, Kevin Holland's taking on John Phillips. I told Shaq earlier on the show that John Phillips has had 28 professional fights, and he's only seen the third round one time in those 28 professional fights, my man. And that was about 10 years ago. I assume this one isn't going the distance. You think Kevin Holland's going to get him out of there in the first?
Yeah, I do. Although, I think Phillips is live for a knockout only, and maybe you could throw him in GPPs for that reason, because if he gets a knockout as the cheapest fighter on the entire card, then he could win a GPP for that reason. I just don't want to rely on a knockout when I think Holland's going to be the better fighter everywhere. I think he can win this fight on the feet with a finish or a decision, and if it hits the ground, I think it's just going to be domination and him picking up a submission at some point. The only issue is that he's 9,500, the most on the entire card. Give me him over those 3 chicks, but him and Song Yadong are going to be my top 2 plays of the week. One of them will probably be in every lineup of mine, and that's where I'm going to be starting most of my lineups, cash or GPP. So yeah, I'm loving some Holland. He just got to score more than anyone at that $9,500 price.
Well, Kyle, thanks for your time, my man. The fans can follow you at Big Marley 3. Happy Thanksgiving to you and your family. Happy Thanksgiving to all the fans listening. And Kyle, let's get this money, my man.
Let's get it. Happy Thanksgiving. Good luck, everybody. Let's get it.
Well, Shaq, now we got to talk about the fight to watch and the fighter to watch. So what is the fight to watch for UFC Beijing?
My fight to watch has got to be that main event, man. It's like a crossroads because, like, if Curtis wins that fight, he's right in title contention. You know, I know he doesn't have the best style for, especially right now with Brock and Jones and all that stuff lingering. But I mean, he's right there. And I mean, if Francis's career is kind of riding on the line, man, I know he's not going to get cut or anything like that. But I mean, if he loses this fight, he's going to have to go down and fight like Adam
Vischerek,
a Rusty Crowder or something. You know? You know, so it's really interesting, that fight, man. You know, Francis needs a win bad. So, and apparently,
real quick, who you got between my boy CV Vischerek and Francis Ngannou?
Oh, my boy CV, bro.
Flying triangle.
But yeah, man, that his career is, you know, just dropping and dropping. And, you know, it seemed like when he went to Vegas, apparently he became this big egomaniac. So let's see how he is when he's back in France.
Man, I just don't like the sounds of that, Shaq. But look, my fight to watch is Jingliang versus David Zawada. Let me know the last time Jingliang had a boring fight, because I'm pretty sure you can't tell me, because there hasn't been one. And David Zawada made his UFC debut with a Fight of the Night performance against Danny Hot Chocolate Roberts. I think they made this matchup for a reason. I think it's the first fight of the main card for a reason. And I think it's going to entertain at 6 a.m. on a Saturday morning, my man. So I'm going to go with Li Jingliang versus David Zawada as the fight to watch. Now, Shaq, who is the fighter to watch for UFC Beijing?
My fighter to watch is the number one Chinese strawweight, and that's Xiaonan, man. I think she's going to have a great performance, and I think she's a fighter to keep an eye on for. I think she's going to hit that top 15, like you said, and, this is the path on the way there.
There's no doubt about that, my man. And my fighter to watch, interestingly enough, is Louis the Last Samurai Smolka. Look, this is a kid that, he was getting blackout drunk every single night, and then he's going in there and fighting guys like Mateus Nicolau, and, hey, he didn't get knocked out. He took his ass whooping like a man. He's such a super tough Hawaiian, but they cut him. He had to go cut his teeth on the regional scene. Allegedly, he quit drinking. He's been sober since January. He got 3 finishes on the regionals. Now he's back taking on the very exciting and young prospect in Mudaerji. And Louis Smolka is going to have to show his heart once again, because this kid is going to be throwing some serious kicks at him. And I feel like if Smolka is to get this win, it has to be a comeback victory of some sort. But regardless, I want to see where he's at after taking a year off from the UFC, man. After changing his life completely. I want to know if a sober Louis Smolka is better than the alcoholic Louis Smolka. And either way, he's always been an exciting fighter, man. So, my fighter to watch is Louis the Last Samurai Smolka, Shaq. Well, Shaq, we did it. It's going down Saturday morning, 3 a.m., UFC Beijing. Curtis and Francis are about to run it back. And looking to get another win here. And follow me at Best Fight Picks. Follow Shaq at MMA Genius 05. Our Instagram, Best Fight Picks Official. Subscribe to Half the Battle on iTunes, SoundCloud, YouTube, and Stitcher. And until the next time, let's cash these bets.